Beom-seok Kwan had built his entire reputation on reading people accurately. In 15 years running organized crime operations across Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Singapore, he'd survived by understanding human nature, recognizing deception before it became dangerous, identifying weakness before it became vulnerability, seeing opportunity before competitors could exploit it. He could walk into a room of strangers and within 10 minutes know who was lying, who was loyal, who could be bought, and who needed to be eliminated. That ability had kept him alive through 3 succession wars, 4 assassination attempts, and countless business negotiations where reading people incorrectly meant death. So when Beom-seok found a woman crying alone on a rain-soaked Tokyo street at 2:47 a.m. on a Friday night, he thought he knew exactly what he was seeing. Someone vulnerable, probably drunk, definitely having the worst night of her life, needing help from a stranger who happened to be passing by. He was catastrophically wrong about everything except the crying part. The rain was brutal, the kind of Tokyo downpour that turned streets into rivers and made visibility nearly impossible. Beom-seok had just left a meeting with Yakuza associates in Roppongi, was being driven back to his Shibuya residence by his regular driver and 2 bodyguards, when he saw her. A black woman sitting on the curb outside a closed izakaya, absolutely soaked through, crying with the kind of desperate abandon that suggested complete emotional breakdown. She was wearing what had probably been an expensive dress before the rain destroyed it, barefoot with broken heels discarded beside her, completely alone in a neighborhood that was dangerous even in daylight. "Stop the car," Beom-seok said. His driver hesitated. "Sir, we're behind schedule." "Stop the car." They stopped. Beom-seok's head bodyguard immediately protested, "It's not safe to approach unknown individuals without advanced security assessment. She's a crying woman alone in the rain. Not a security threat." Beom-seok grabbed an umbrella from the vehicle. "Wait here. I'll be 2 minutes." He approached the woman carefully, umbrella extended to shield her from the rain. "Excuse me," he said in English, noticing her features suggested she wasn't Japanese. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" She looked up, and Beom-seok saw her face clearly for the first time. Absolutely beautiful. Even with makeup running from tears and rain, even with her hair plastered to her face, even in obvious distress. Maybe late 20s, with features that suggested African and possibly Caribbean heritage, wearing jewelry that looked expensive despite the bedraggled circumstances. "I'm fine," she said, her voice breaking on the words. "Just having the worst night of my entire life." "You can go. I don't need help. You're sitting alone in the rain in Roppongi at 3 a.m. crying. You clearly need some kind of help. What I need is for the universe to stop being cruel. Can you provide that?" She laughed bitterly. "No? Then you can't help." Beom-seok sat down next to her on the curb, holding the umbrella over both of them. His bodyguards would be furious, this violated every security protocol they'd established. But something about this woman's complete despair made him stay. "What happened?" he asked. "What happened is I flew from New York to Tokyo to surprise my boyfriend for our anniversary. What happened is I found him in our apartment with someone else. What happened is when I confronted him, he told me he'd been cheating for 6 months and our entire relationship was a lie. What happened is I ran out without my phone, without my shoes making it very far, without any way to get back to the airport or contact anyone I know." She wiped tears that were immediately replaced by rain. "So now I'm sitting in the rain having a complete breakdown because my life just imploded and I have no idea what to do next. Where's your passport? Your money? In the apartment I just ran from. With the boyfriend I never want to see again. Do you have friends in Tokyo? Anyone who could help?" "I have no one. I came here because of him. Everyone I know is in New York." Beom-seok made a decision based on the same instinct that had kept him alive for 15 years. This woman was genuinely in crisis, genuinely vulnerable, genuinely needing help from someone who could provide it. "I can help. I have resources, I can get you a hotel room, get you money to buy clothes and a phone, help you arrange flight back to New York tomorrow. You don't have to sit in the rain having your breakdown alone." She looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you help a complete stranger?" Because I've had nights where everything fell apart and I needed help from unexpected sources. Because leaving someone alone in the rain when I could easily help seems cruel. Because, he paused, being honest, I have resources that make helping you cost me nothing except time. You're rich. Yes. And you just help random crying women out of altruism? I help when helping costs me nothing and prevents someone from suffering unnecessarily. Call it enlightened self-interest. The universe occasionally rewards kindness, and I collect those rewards when I need them. She studied him for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if this was genuine help or some kind of trap. If I accept your help, what do you want in return? Nothing. You get a hotel room for tonight, money for immediate needs, assistance getting back to New York. I get the satisfaction of helping someone who needed it. That seems too good to be true. It probably is. But your alternative is sitting in the rain all night or trying to go back to the apartment where your cheating boyfriend is. Which sounds better than accepting help from a stranger? She laughed despite the tears. When you put it that way, stranger help sounds great. What's your name? Gabriella. Gabriella Emerson. I'm Beom-seok Kwan. Come on, Gabriella Emerson. Let's get you out of the rain. He helped her to her feet, guided her toward his vehicle where his bodyguards were waiting with expressions that suggested they had many concerns about this decision. And that's when everything changed. As they approached Beom-seok's sedan, headlights appeared from multiple directions. Bright, blinding headlights that turned the rainy Tokyo street into daylight. 10 identical black Escalades surrounded them within 30 seconds, positioning with military precision that created a complete perimeter. Beom-seok's bodyguards immediately drew weapons, moving to defensive positions around him. His driver was already calling for backup. But before anyone could start shooting, doors opened on all 10 Escalades and armed men stepped out. Not attacking. Bowing. Bowing to Gabriella Emerson, the crying woman Beom-seok had just tried to help. Miss Emerson, one of them said in English with an American accent. We've been searching for you for 90 minutes. Are you safe? Did this man harm you in any way? Gabriella's entire demeanor changed. The desperate, crying, vulnerable woman disappeared, replaced by someone with absolute command presence. Stand down, she told the armed men. I'm fine. Mr. Kwan was being helpful. Nobody threatens him or his people. Clear? Yes, ma'am. She turned to Beom-seok, who was standing there processing the fact that the vulnerable crying woman he'd tried to help apparently commanded a security force that rivaled small armies. I should explain, she said, her voice completely different now, confident, controlled, nothing like the broken person from 2 minutes ago. I'm not just a heartbroken girlfriend stranded in Tokyo. I'm Gabriella Emerson. My family owns Emerson Global Security, the largest private military contractor in North America. Those 10 SUVs contain my personal protection detail that I deliberately ditched because I wanted to have my breakdown alone without witnesses. Beom-seok stared at her. You have a 10-vehicle security detail. Technically 15 vehicles. 5 are doing perimeter security beyond what you can see. My head of security is paranoid. You're a private military contractor, Heiress. My father owns the company. I run operations for Asia-Pacific region. Which is why I was in Tokyo, business meetings all week, then trying to surprise my boyfriend afterward. The boyfriend thing didn't work out obviously. You let me think you were helpless and stranded. I am heartbroken and was having a genuine breakdown. The helpless part was creative editing. She smiled slightly. Sorry for the deception. I genuinely appreciated you stopping to help. Most people wouldn't have. One of her security team approached. Ma'am, we need to get you to secure location. You've been exposed in public for 93 minutes without proper protection. I'm aware. Give me a moment. She turned back to Beom-seok. Thank you for trying to help. That was kind, even if I didn't actually need the kind of help you were offering. What kind of help did you need? The kind where someone just sits with you in the rain while you cry about your life falling apart. You provided that. It was valuable even if the circumstances were more complicated than you realized. Beom-seok's mind was racing, recalculating everything he thought he'd understood about this encounter. Emerson Global Security, he said slowly. You're the company that provides security for Fortune 500 executives, that does contract work for governments, that operates in conflict zones worldwide. That's us. My father built it from nothing 30 years ago. Now we're the most trusted name in private security globally. And you run Asia-Pacific operations. I do. Which means I probably should have recognized your name when you introduced yourself. Beom-seok Kwan, you run organized crime operations across Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Your organization is one of the primary targets in several threat assessments my company produces for legitimate businesses trying to avoid criminal entanglement. Now it was Beom-seok's turn to be surprised. You know who I am. I know exactly who you are. Your organization has tried to infiltrate 3 of my client companies in the past 2 years. We prevented all 3 attempts. She smiled. Small world, isn't it? They were standing in the rain, surrounded by 15 vehicles worth of private military contractors and organized crime bodyguards, both of them realizing they'd completely misunderstood who the other person was. This is the strangest night of my life, Beom-seok said. Mine too. And I've had some very strange nights. Her head of security approached again, more urgently this time. Ma'am, we really need to move you now. This location is compromised and we have potential hostile surveillance from multiple directions. Fine. We're moving. She looked at Beom-seok one last time. Thank you again for the kindness, even though I didn't need it the way you thought. That impulse to help someone crying in the rain, that's rare in our world. Don't lose it. She got into one of the Escalades. The entire 15-vehicle convoy departed within 90 seconds, disappearing into Tokyo traffic like they'd never been there. Beom-seok stood in the rain, umbrella forgotten, processing what had just happened. He'd tried to help a vulnerable woman and discovered she was one of the most powerful people in the private security industry. She'd been genuinely crying about heartbreak while commanding a military-grade protection force. They'd both completely misjudged each other. And something about the entire encounter made Beom-seok want to see her again. Not for business. Not for strategic advantage. Just to understand who Gabriella Emerson actually was beneath the layers of vulnerability and power. Sir, his bodyguard said carefully. We should leave. This location is now known to a private military contractor with significant resources. Staying here creates unnecessary exposure. Agreed. Let's go. But as they drove back to his residence, Beom-seok couldn't stop thinking about the woman who'd been crying in the rain. The woman who'd turned out to be his professional adversary and the most interesting person he'd met in years. He was definitely going to see her again. The question was whether that would be a catastrophically bad decision or the most important decision of his life. Probably both. Subscribe to see what happens when a crime boss and a private military contractor Heiress discover they've completely misjudged each other and can't stop thinking about it. Comment where you're watching from, and tell me, have you ever helped someone who turned out to be completely different than you thought? This story is just beginning. Beom-seok spent 3 days trying to stop thinking about Gabriella Emerson. It didn't work. He tried focusing on business. Finalizing a major smuggling contract with Indonesian partners, resolving a territory dispute with a Yakuza family in Osaka, planning expansion of his cryptocurrency laundering operations into Vietnam. None of it held his attention the way it usually did. His mind kept returning to that rainy Tokyo street. To a woman crying with absolute abandon despite commanding enough security resources to wage small wars. To someone who'd been genuinely vulnerable about emotional pain while being invulnerable to almost everything else. On the 4th day, he admitted to himself that he needed to see her again. The question was how to arrange that without making it obvious that he was pursuing the heiress to a company that actively worked against his criminal interests. He started by researching Emerson Global Security comprehensively. Used his intelligence networks to compile everything available about the company and about Gabriella specifically. What he found was impressive and concerning in equal measure. Emerson Global Security was a $15 billion company providing executive protection, threat assessment, security consulting, and private military services to governments and corporations worldwide. They operated in 63 countries with over 40,000 employees, ranging from bodyguards to intelligence analysts to former special operations soldiers. The company was completely legitimate, no criminal connections, no scandals, no legal violations in 30 years of operations. They were so clean that governments trusted them with classified security contracts. Gabriella Emerson had joined the company at 22 after graduating from Yale with degrees in international relations and business management. Spent 5 years working her way up through various divisions: executive protection, threat assessment, intelligence operations. Took over Asia-Pacific regional operations at 27 and had tripled revenue in that region over 3 years through aggressive expansion and exceptional client service. She was brilliant, ruthless in business, and completely incorruptible according to every assessment Beom-seok could find. Also single, following a breakup with the boyfriend she'd caught cheating. That breakup had happened exactly the night Beom-seok found her crying in the rain. The personal information was harder to find, she kept her private life extremely private. But Beom-seok had resources that most people didn't, including hackers who could access things that weren't supposed to be accessible. He learned she lived in a secured penthouse in Shibuya when she was in Tokyo, maintained residences in Hong Kong and Singapore for regional operations, traveled constantly for client meetings and security assessments. She trained in multiple martial arts, spoke 5 languages fluently, had a concealed carry permit in 7 countries. She was also apparently passionate about art, collected contemporary African and Caribbean artists, attended gallery openings regularly, donated substantial money to arts education programs. That last detail gave Beom-seok an idea. There was a major gallery opening in Roppongi on Saturday night, a showcase of emerging African artists that Gabriella would likely attend based on her collection interests and donation patterns. He could accidentally encounter her there. Make it seem like coincidence rather than deliberate pursuit. His advisor, a woman named Hannah who'd been with his organization for 12 years, looked at him like he was insane when he mentioned attending an art gallery opening. You hate art galleries. You've refused every invitation to cultural events for the entire time I've known you. Why would you suddenly want to attend an opening for emerging African artists? I'm expanding my cultural appreciation. You're pursuing the private military contractor Heiress you met in the rain. Beom-seok didn't bother denying it. Hannah was too perceptive to fool. Is it that obvious? It's incredibly obvious. You've been distracted for 4 days, you've done extensive research on Emerson Global Security that has nothing to do with any current operations, and now you're suddenly interested in art galleries that coincidentally match her collection interests. Hannah paused. This is a terrible idea. Why? Because she runs a company that actively works against criminal organizations like yours. Because getting involved with her creates massive conflicts of interest. Because mixing business and personal with someone who's fundamentally opposed to everything you do professionally is strategically catastrophic. Noted. I'm going to the gallery opening anyway. Then at least go with proper security and a cover story that explains your presence. What cover story? Say you're considering collecting contemporary African art and wanted to see the exhibition before deciding whether to purchase anything. It's plausible for someone with your wealth, and it gives you legitimate reason to be there beyond obviously pursuing her. That's actually good. I've been managing your public image for 12 years. I know how to create plausible cover stories. Saturday night, Beom-seok attended the Roppongi gallery opening with minimal security. Just 2 bodyguards in civilian clothes who could pass as assistants rather than protection. The gallery was crowded with Tokyo's wealthy and culturally sophisticated, all of them viewing the exhibited artwork while networking and drinking expensive wine. Beom-seok spotted Gabriella within 5 minutes. She was wearing a stunning dress that was probably designer, talking with the gallery owner about one of the larger pieces, looking completely different from the crying woman in the rain. Confident, professional, radiating the kind of presence that made people naturally defer to her. She was also alone, no visible security, though Beom-seok assumed they were positioned discreetly throughout the gallery. He approached casually, timing it so he'd be examining artwork near her when she finished her conversation with the gallery owner. This is beautiful, he said, gesturing to the painting they were both near, a large abstract piece with vibrant colors. The artist has remarkable control of color and composition. Gabriella turned, recognized him immediately, and smiled with what looked like genuine amusement. Mr. Kwan. What an unexpected coincidence. I didn't realize you collected contemporary African art. I'm considering starting a collection. Thought I should see what's available before making purchase decisions. Of course. Just coincidentally at the exact gallery opening I'd be most likely to attend based on my collection interests. She'd seen through his cover story immediately. Beom-seok decided honesty was the better approach. I wanted to see you again. This seemed less intrusive than showing up at your office or residence. So you researched my interests, found an event I'd likely attend, and arranged to accidentally encounter me here. Yes. That's either creepy stalking or flattering pursuit depending on how I choose to interpret it. Which interpretation are you choosing? Still deciding. She turned back to the painting. This piece is from a Nigerian artist based in London. She does remarkable work exploring diaspora identity and cultural displacement. I'm probably going to buy it. It's worth approximately $80,000 based on the gallery pricing I saw. Good investment. Her work has been appreciating consistently over the past 3 years. You researched the artist and pricing before coming here. I researched everything. Wanted to be prepared to have informed conversation about something you care about. That's thorough. Possibly excessive, but thorough. She looked at him directly. Why did you want to see me again? We're fundamentally opposed professionally. You run criminal operations, I run a company that protects businesses from criminal operations. Getting involved beyond our chance encounter in the rain creates conflicts for both of us. I know. I wanted to see you anyway. Why? Because you were crying in the rain about heartbreak while commanding a private military force. Because you appreciated a stranger offering help even though you didn't need it. Because you're the most interesting person I've met in years and I can't stop thinking about you. He paused. Is that honest enough? That's very honest. Possibly too honest for a first conversation after our rain encounter. Would you prefer I pretend this is just about art appreciation? No. I prefer honesty. She signaled to someone Beom-seok couldn't see, probably her security confirming she was safe. But honesty requires me to tell you that pursuing me is complicated. My company actively works against organizations like yours. If we got involved personally, I'd have to recuse myself from any operations or assessments related to your businesses to avoid conflict of interest. That would damage my professional credibility. I understand. I'd face similar complications explaining to my organization why I'm involved with someone whose company has prevented multiple infiltration attempts against our operations. So we both recognize this as professionally problematic. Yes. And you still want to pursue it? Yes. Do you? Gabriella was quiet for a moment, studying him. I think I do. Which is probably the worst professional decision I could make. But the worst professional decisions sometimes make the best personal stories. Is that a yes to having dinner with me? That's a yes to coffee first. Dinner requires more commitment than I'm ready for after one chance encounter and one gallery stalking. Coffee is acceptable. When? Tomorrow afternoon. 3 p.m. There's a place in Shibuya called Blue Bottle that has excellent coffee and enough public visibility that my security team won't panic about me meeting with someone they consider a potential threat. Your security considers me a threat? You run a major criminal organization. Of course they consider you a threat. But I've overruled their concerns because I'm an adult who makes my own decisions about who I have coffee with. Fair. Blue Bottle in Shibuya, 3 p.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. And don't bring obvious security, it makes my team nervous when they can't assess the threat level clearly. I'll come with minimal protection. Good. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Kwan. Beom-seok. If we're having coffee, we should use first names. Beom-seok. I'll see you tomorrow. She left the gallery shortly after, her security materializing from wherever they'd been positioned to escort her out. Beom-seok stayed for another 30 minutes to maintain the cover story about considering art purchases, then left himself. Hannah called him on the drive back to his residence. How did the gallery stocking go? Successfully. We're having coffee tomorrow. This is still a terrible idea. Probably. I'm doing it anyway. You're going to create significant complications for both your operations and hers. I know. But she's worth the complications. You've decided that after one rain encounter and one gallery conversation? Yes. Hannah sighed. You're impossible. Try not to start a war with a private military contractor because your personal life got messy. I'll do my best. The coffee meeting the next day was remarkably normal despite how abnormal the circumstances were. They talked about their very different backgrounds. Her growing up in New York as the daughter of a security company founder, him inheriting a Korean criminal organization after his father's death. They discussed their professional challenges, her dealing with corporate clients who didn't understand security needs, him managing criminal operations across multiple countries with different laws and cultural expectations. Do you ever regret it? Gabriella asked. Running a criminal organization instead of doing something legitimate? I regret specific things I've done, people I've hurt, operations that caused harm. But I don't regret the overall path because I didn't really choose it. I inherited the organization when my father died. Walking away would have meant abandoning hundreds of people whose livelihoods depend on operations I manage. That's rationalization. You could have transitioned to legitimate businesses. I could have. But that would have taken years and cost millions and potentially destroyed everything my father built. Maintaining the criminal operations while slowly transitioning specific divisions to legal work seemed more responsible. Are you actually transitioning things to legitimate business? Some operations, yes. It's slow and expensive and complicated. But I'm trying to build something that won't get me killed or imprisoned long term. That's pragmatic. Also still criminal. I'm aware. Does that bother you ethically? It should. But I grew up around my father's work. He provided security for some morally questionable clients over the years. The line between legitimate and criminal is blurrier than most people admit. So I'm less bothered by your profession than I probably should be. Your company has very strict ethics about who you work for. You've turned down lucrative contracts because clients had criminal connections. You've researched our company policies. I research everything. It's how I've survived this long. They talked for 2 hours, well past when they'd planned to leave. The conversation flowed easily despite how different their worlds were. When they finally left the coffee shop, Gabriella said something that surprised him. I enjoyed this. More than I expected to given the professional complications. Does that mean we can have dinner next time instead of just coffee? That means we can try dinner and see if the enjoyment continues when we're not in public spaces with security watching everything. When? I'm in Tokyo for another week handling client meetings. Friday night work for you? Friday works. I'll make reservations somewhere appropriate. Somewhere appropriate meaning somewhere that won't damage either of our reputations if we're seen together. Exactly that. Good. Send me details by Thursday. She left with her security detail, and Beom-seok returned to his residence feeling better than he had in months. Hannah was waiting with an expression that suggested she had concerns. You had coffee with the private military contractor Heiress. How did it go? We're having dinner Friday. This is escalating quickly. It is. But it feels right. Feelings aren't strategy. This relationship is going to create problems. Probably. But she's worth the problems. You keep saying that. I hope you're right. Over the following weeks, Beom-seok and Gabriella built something neither had expected, a relationship that worked despite all the professional complications. They were careful about it. Gabriella recused herself from any Emerson global security operations related to Beom-seok's organization to avoid conflict of interest. Beom-seok kept their relationship completely separate from his criminal operations, never discussing business in ways that could compromise her professional integrity. But privately, they were building genuine connection. Gabriella understood the moral complexity of Beom-seok's work because she'd grown up around private security operations that existed in gray areas between legal and questionable. Beom-seok understood the pressure of running major operations while maintaining ethical standards because he faced similar challenges in his attempts to transition parts of his organization to legitimate business. They challenged each other, Gabriella pushing Beom-seok to transition more operations to legal work, Beom-seok pushing Gabriella to recognize that not all criminal operations were equally harmful. And they were falling for each other, despite knowing how complicated that would make everything. The complication arrived 6 weeks into their relationship, in the form of Gabriella's father visiting Tokyo for a regional security conference. Robert Emerson was a legend in the private security industry. Former Navy SEAL who'd started Emerson Global Security with nothing but expertise and determination, built it into a global powerhouse, maintained absolute ethical standards for 30 years despite numerous opportunities for corruption. He was also notoriously protective of his daughter and would absolutely not approve of her dating a criminal organization boss. "My father's coming to Tokyo," Gabriella told Beom-seok during dinner at his private residence. "He wants to meet you." "He knows about us?" "He knows I'm seeing someone. He doesn't know who yet because I've been strategically vague about details." "How do you think he'll react when he finds out you're dating someone whose organization his company has targeted in multiple security assessments?" "Poorly. Very poorly. Possibly violently poorly despite being in his 60s. Gabriella set down her wine glass. "I could keep hiding it from him. Tell him you're a legitimate businessman, avoid any details about your actual operations. But that feels dishonest and he'd probably discover the truth anyway through his intelligence networks. What's the alternative? Tell him the truth and deal with the consequences. Explain that I'm dating you fully aware of what you do, that I've recused myself from any company operations related to your organization, that I'm managing the conflict of interest appropriately." He's not going to accept that. Probably not. But lying seems worse than facing his disapproval honestly. "When is he arriving?" "Next Tuesday. He wants to have dinner with us Thursday night." Beom-seok processed that. Meeting the father of the woman he was dating would be complicated under normal circumstances. Meeting the father when that father ran a company dedicated to preventing criminal operations like the ones Beom-seok managed would be exponentially more complicated. "I'll meet him. But I should warn you, I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. If he asks what I do, I'll be honest about running a criminal organization while explaining that I'm transitioning operations to legitimate business. That's probably going to make the dinner very uncomfortable. Better uncomfortable honesty than comfortable deception that explodes later." The dinner happened at a high-end restaurant in Ginza that Robert Emerson had selected. Neutral territory, public enough that dramatic confrontations would be constrained by social setting, expensive enough to match the significance of the meeting. Beom-seok arrived with minimal security, knowing that Robert Emerson would have his own protection team positioned throughout the restaurant. Robert was waiting at the table when they arrived, tall, still imposing despite his age, with the kind of presence that came from decades of leading dangerous operations. He stood as they approached, his expression neutral but his eyes assessing Beom-seok with professional precision. "Mr. Emerson," Gabriella said. "This is Beom-seok Kwan." "Beom-seok, my father Robert Emerson." They shook hands. Robert's grip was firm, testing, the kind of handshake that communicated strength without being aggressive. "Mr. Kwan. My daughter speaks highly of you. Though she's been notably vague about what you do professionally." "That's because what I do professionally is complicated and potentially controversial." Beom-seok decided immediate honesty was better than letting tension build through the meal. "I run organized crime operations across Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Smuggling, money laundering, some gambling operations. I'm working on transitioning parts of my business to legitimate operations, but currently most of what I do is criminal." The table went completely silent. Robert's expression didn't change, though his eyes hardened slightly. "You run criminal operations." "The kind of operations my company produces threat assessments about to protect clients from." "Yes. Your company has prevented 3 of my infiltration attempts against potential targets in the past 2 years. You're very good at what you do." And you're dating my daughter despite the obvious conflict of interest. I am. She's recused herself from any Emerson global security operations related to my organization to avoid compromising her professional integrity. We keep our relationship completely separate from business on both sides. Robert looked at Gabriella. You're dating a criminal boss. How exactly do you think that's appropriate for someone in your professional position? I think it's complicated but manageable, Gabriella said calmly. I'm not involved in his operations, he's not seeking information about our company's operations. We're building a personal relationship that exists separately from our professional worlds. There is no separate. His professional world is criminal. Your professional world is protecting people from criminals. Those aren't compatible. They're compatible if we're both committed to maintaining appropriate boundaries. And when those boundaries fail? When someone in his organization tries to use your relationship to compromise our company? When law enforcement starts investigating him and you're caught in the investigation because of the relationship? Then we deal with those complications if they arise. But refusing to pursue the relationship because of potential future problems seems like letting fear prevent something meaningful. Robert turned to Beom-seok. What are your intentions with my daughter? My intentions are to continue building a relationship with someone I care about while respecting the professional boundaries necessary to make that relationship work. I'm not trying to compromise her professionally, I'm not seeking access to your company's operations. I just want to be with her. How do I know you're not using her to get intelligence about our protective measures or client operations? You don't. You have to trust your daughter's judgment about whether I'm being honest. She spent 6 weeks getting to know me, she's capable of determining if I'm manipulating her or if my interest is genuine. Robert was quiet for a long moment, clearly processing everything. I don't like this. I don't like my daughter involved with someone whose organization represents everything our company works against. But she's an adult who makes her own decisions, and I trust her judgment even when I disagree with her choices. He looked at Gabriella. If you're determined to pursue this relationship, I won't interfere. But I'm watching carefully. If he compromises you professionally or personally, I will respond with all resources available to our company. Clear? Clear, Dad. Thank you for trusting me. The rest of the dinner was tense but civil. Robert asked Beom-seok about his transition plans for legitimate business, clearly assessing whether those plans were genuine or just cover story. Beom-seok was honest about the challenges. How expensive it was to transition criminal operations, how complicated it was to build legitimate business while maintaining criminal income to fund the transition. You could accelerate the transition if you had capital investment, Robert said. Legitimate investors who could provide funding for legal business operations without requiring criminal activity to generate revenue. I could. But legitimate investors don't typically fund former criminals trying to go legitimate. The risk assessment is too unfavorable. Not if the former criminal has proper endorsement from trusted sources. Beom-seok understood what Robert was offering. If Beom-seok proved himself trustworthy over time, Robert might provide connections or even direct investment to help accelerate transition to legitimate business. It was an unexpected olive branch from someone who had every reason to oppose the relationship. I appreciate that, Beom-seok said. If I prove worthy of that kind of trust, I'll take you up on it. Don't make me regret trusting my daughter's judgment about you. I won't. The dinner ended with cautious détente rather than approval, but it was better than the outright rejection Beom-seok had expected. After Robert left, Gabriella turned to Beom-seok. That went better than I thought it would. He didn't threaten to kill you or forbid me from seeing you. He absolutely threatened to kill me, just very professionally. But yes, better than expected. He offered to help fund your transition to legitimate business. That's significant, he doesn't offer that kind of support lightly. I noticed. It's generous given that I'm dating his daughter against his preferences. It's strategic. He's giving you incentive to actually transition to legitimate operations instead of just claiming you're planning to. If you succeed, the relationship becomes less problematic. If you don't succeed, he has leverage to end the relationship by withdrawing support. That's very calculated. My father is very calculated. It's how he built a $15 billion company from nothing. Over the following months, Beom-seok worked to prove he deserved the trust Gabriella and her father were placing in him. He accelerated transition of several operations to legitimate business. A gambling operation became a licensed casino, smuggling routes became legitimate import-export operations, money laundering infrastructure became legal financial services. It was expensive, complicated, and required significant changes to how his organization operated. But Gabriella helped navigate the process, providing advice based on her experience with legitimate business operations and connecting him with legal consultants who specialized in helping former criminal operations transition. Robert Emerson watched the progress carefully. When Beom-seok successfully transitioned his first major operation to complete legitimacy, a gambling network that became a legal casino chain, Robert provided the promised capital investment for the next transition phase. "You're actually doing it," Robert said during a meeting to finalize the investment terms. "Most people claim they're going legitimate but never follow through. You're putting in the work and the money to make it happen. Your daughter has been helping. She understands business operations better than I do in some areas. She's brilliant at operations. Always has been. It's why I put her in charge of Asia-Pacific region despite her being young for that responsibility. She's proven the faith was warranted. Revenue in this region has tripled under her leadership. It has. Partially because she's ruthless about identifying inefficiency and eliminating it." Robert paused. "She's also ruthless about protecting the people she cares about. If you hurt her, she'll destroy you professionally before I even get involved. I believe that. It's one of the things I love about her." "You love her?" "Yes. Haven't told her yet because we've been focused on managing professional complications. But yes, I love her." "Then tell her. Life's too short to not tell people how you feel about them." 2 years after finding Gabriella crying in the rain, Beom-seok had successfully transitioned 70% of his criminal operations to legitimate business. The remaining 30% were operations that couldn't be easily converted or that still generated revenue needed to fund the continuing transition. But he'd proven the commitment was real. Proven he was actually building something legitimate rather than just claiming to. And he'd proven to Gabriella and her father that he was worth the complicated relationship. "I love you," he told Gabriella one evening at his residence. "I've loved you for over a year, but I was waiting until I'd proven I deserved you before saying it. You didn't need to prove anything. I loved you 6 months ago and I've just been waiting for you to catch up. I'm sometimes slow about emotional realizations. I've noticed. But you're thorough once you figure things out. Marry me." Gabriella looked at him in surprise. That escalated quickly from "I love you" to "marry me." "I'm efficient about important decisions once I've made them. We've been together for 2 years and you're just now telling me you love me. That's not efficient. I'm improving. Will you marry me?" "Yes. But only if you promise to finish transitioning the remaining criminal operations to legitimate business within 3 years. I'm not marrying someone who's still actively running criminal enterprises long-term. Deal. Full transition to legitimate operations within 3 years or you can annul the marriage." "That's very transactional. We're both pragmatic people. Transactional works for us." They married 6 months later in a small ceremony that combined Korean and American traditions, with Gabriella's father giving her away despite his initial reservations about the relationship. Robert pulled Beom-seok aside before the ceremony. "You've proven you deserve her. Don't make me regret believing that." "I won't. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm not going to screw it up by reverting to criminal operations or doing anything that damages what we built." "Good. Welcome to the family. Try not to get arrested." "I'll do my best." 3 years later, Beom-seok completed the full transition to legitimate business operations. Everything was legal. Casinos, import-export companies, financial services, real estate development. No more criminal enterprises, no more illegal operations. It had cost hundreds of millions and taken 5 years total, but he'd done it. "We're completely legitimate," he told Gabriella. "Everything legal, everything above board. No more conflict between your professional world and my operations. How does it feel? Strange. Less exciting than criminal operations, significantly more complicated legally, but less stressful because I'm not constantly worried about arrest or assassination. Do you miss the criminal work? Sometimes. But not enough to go back to it. This is better long term. They were in their Tokyo residence, a penthouse they'd purchased together that combined Beom-seok's security requirements with Gabriella's aesthetic preferences. I'm pregnant, Gabriella said. Beom-seok stared at her. What? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. We're having a baby. We are. Is that okay? We've never discussed whether we wanted children. It's more than okay. It's perfect. You're sure? Because raising a child while running major business operations is going to be complicated. Everything about our relationship has been complicated. We've managed everything else. We'll manage this too. Very pragmatic. We're pragmatic people. It's why we work. Their daughter was born 7 months later, a healthy baby girl they named Maya, combining the Korean and American cultures that had shaped their relationship. 10 years after Beom-seok found Gabriella crying in the rain, they'd built something extraordinary. Beom-seok ran a completely legitimate business empire worth billions, built from the criminal organization he'd inherited through careful transition over years. Gabriella had become CEO of Emerson Global Security after her father retired, expanding the company to new markets and maintaining its reputation for integrity. They had 2 children, Maya and a son named James, being raised with honest understanding of their parents' complicated backgrounds and the work required to build legitimate success from questionable origins. And they had a relationship that had survived everything. Professional conflicts, family opposition, the challenging transition from criminal to legitimate operations, the constant complications of combining their very different worlds. Do you ever regret it? Gabriella asked one evening, watching their children play. Everything you gave up to transition to legitimate business, all the complications of our relationship? Never. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Finding you crying in the rain was the moment my entire life changed direction. I wasn't actually helpless that night. I had 15 vehicles worth of security looking for me. I know. But you were genuinely heartbroken and genuinely needed someone to sit with you in the rain. That need was real even if the helplessness was exaggerated. It was. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for not having me killed when your security showed up. That was never really a risk. I could tell immediately you were trying to help, not harm. How? Because you sat down next to me in the rain instead of trying to get me to go somewhere. People with bad intentions try to move you to secondary locations. People genuinely trying to help meet you where you are. That's very tactical analysis of a moment of kindness. I'm a tactical person. It's how I assess everything. They'd built something real from that rainy Tokyo encounter. A relationship that had required both of them to change, to compromise, to build something new from their very different backgrounds. The crime boss who'd tried to help a crying stranger. The private military contractor Heiress who'd been having a genuine breakdown despite commanding security forces that could wage small wars. Both of them discovering that sometimes the most important moments come from unexpected encounters on rainy streets. And that the person you think you're helping might actually be the person who saves you. Sometimes the people who look most vulnerable are the most powerful. Beom-seok Kwan thought he was helping a heartbroken woman stranded in Tokyo. He thought he understood the situation, someone vulnerable, needing assistance, grateful for kindness from a stranger. He was wrong about everything except the heartbreak. Gabriella Emerson was genuinely devastated about her relationship ending. But she wasn't helpless, wasn't stranded, wasn't someone who needed rescuing by a stranger who happened to be passing by. She was the heir to a private military contracting empire, commanding security resources that rivaled small armies, capable of handling any threat except emotional pain. And that emotional pain was real. Needing someone to sit with her in the rain while she cried was genuine need, even if every other aspect of vulnerability was circumstantial rather than absolute. Together they proved that power and vulnerability aren't opposites, they coexist in everyone. The most powerful people still need kindness. The most capable people still experience heartbreak. Strength doesn't prevent pain, it just changes how you handle it. They also proved that the worst professional complications can create the best personal relationships if you're willing to work through them. Their relationship required both of them to change. Beom-seok transitioning from criminal operations to legitimate business, Gabriella recusing herself from company operations that conflicted with their relationship. Those changes were expensive, complicated, and required years of sustained effort. But they built something worth the cost, partnership that combined her strategic brilliance with his operational capabilities, love that survived professional opposition and family concerns. The crime boss and the private military contractor Heiress. The man who stopped to help a crying stranger and the woman who commanded the security forces that surrounded them moments later. Both of them discovering that the most important encounters happen when you stop to help someone who looks like they need it, even when, especially when, they turn out to be completely different than you assumed. If you loved this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about unexpected encounters, complicated relationships, and the transformations that happen when powerful people choose vulnerability. Comment below, have you ever helped someone who turned out to be completely different than you thought? Or been in a situation where you looked vulnerable but were actually in control? Share your stories. Thanks for watching, and remember, the people who look most helpless might be the most powerful. Stop to help anyway. You never know when that moment of kindness will change your entire life. Until next time. Cloud with rain sparkles.